Hello everyone. So I recently made a video on the topic of use cases, various use cases of org mode, and I basically explained uh, various things that I do using org mode. In fact, I do quite a lot of things, and I just wanted to share that with all of you. And I received a comment on that particular video about not using org mode with Jira. Now, I of course have tried it in the past, and I thought I'll probably make a separate video on this topic and give you my feedback on this. Now, Jira is a tool that many people use, organizations use for collaboration. So collaboration is actually very important here. Number one. Number two, Jira is a web-based tool primarily. Yes, it has REST API and you can do a lot of things with the REST API. In fact, on my other channel, on my Ravi Sagar channel, I have like an entire playlist. I have several videos talking about various things that you can do with REST API. But to be honest, you can do, like, if you're talking about basic task management, let's say you have some issues assigned to you or basically any issue, you can actually do quite a lot of things. So, but still, REST API is not really able to do each and everything, right? And what else? Now, when you're working with a tool like Jira, you are, as I mentioned, collaborating, and of course, you want to make sure that your team, if they're using Jira, they of course update the issues regularly. Now, the thing is, or the problem is that I have tried it many times in the past to basically somehow sync my Jira issues with the org mode. Now the problem is, or I should say, and I'll be honest with you. Uh, First of all, I use org mode mostly alone, so I don't really use it for collaboration with others. Although I have tried, but I know it is very difficult, challenging because you cannot really expect each and everyone who is working with you to use something like org mode. And even if you want to collaborate, it is again very difficult to agree on a standard or like way of working because we all have the whole idea of using org mode is complete flexibility. Use it the way you want to use it. So you can basically, for example, if I look at one of my header or one of my file where I keep track of my projects, I may have 3 levels, but the other person may have 4 levels, right? I mean, that is of course not really a big problem because you can still agree on some kind of a format, but still, it is end of the day, it is a text file, and when you have full control and visibility over your own file, uh, of course, it is fragile, but you can fix it. You know what what can go wrong. But when you're collaborating with someone else, then you need like very tight sync. I mean, not really the actual technical sync, but the sync between uh, both the developers or both the users. So collaboration is of course challenging. Now, if you involve a tool like Jira in between, then it is adding one more layer of complexity on top of it. Now, let us say you're working on some delivery and you have some epics, right? Now you want to break down those epics into stories. And and by the way, this is something that I do every day. This is my job. I basically help others to get most out of Jira. And that doesn't really mean that I do automation and scripting and customizations in Jira. That also means that I have to work with people to uh, basically use the tool. I help them use the tool. So I'm usually part of their Scrum calls, or I'm part of their delivery. As of course someone who is supporting, but I have to be with them um, for those consultations that I do for my clients. Now, let us say if you break down your epics into stories. Stories are of course assigned to people. You do estimation. You move things quite regularly. Let us say you have a stand-up call, and in your stand-up call, you want to make sure that people are updating stuff in the tool, and you expect people to basically do it straight away or maybe immediately after the call, and you're looking at the board. or maybe you're looking at the backlog and then you pick some items from the backlog. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that if you're using a tool like Jira, the collaboration part is the key. And when you are collaborating, it means that there are frequent updates on your Jira issue. For example, take let's say you have 3 stories assigned to you. Usually, you have more people who are contributing to it. So maybe someone is adding a comment, someone is adding a link to the same issue. Now imagine that you have synced that issue in your org mode or somehow using REST API, right? And to be honest, it has nothing to do with just org mode. Uh, and I know there are some modes, and I've tried them, but none of the modes worked really well for me. And sometimes you have to basically choose or pick the problems or choose your own battles. So you can't really fix each and everything, and sometimes it doesn't really make sense. And I think in this case, I'm sure if we all work together on it, then we will probably be able to find a solution. But the problem is that by the time you pull something from Jira to your org file, let us say for each and every issue there is like an equivalent file or maybe some list somewhere. Now, when you have that information in your Jira um, or that org file or whatever local text file that you have that Jira information. By the time you do some updates, or by the time you're looking at the file, you cannot be sure that it is the up to date information, because the way these modes work, it's like push and pull. So basically, you pull something from Jira, then you update something, and then you push it back, and and it is not really a true sync. It can be a true sync when you are waiting for the other person to maybe update something, or maybe if you are waiting for someone to add a comment and then you're doing something on top of it. I think the way it really works, I mean, I'm talking about like offline working, is when you do some incremental updates to only a specific part. For example, if you're logging time, now when you log your time back to, let us say, a story, or maybe when you add a comment, you don't really have to wait for the up to date issue information. You can just log time, and the log will, of course, be updated or added to your original issue. So that, in a way, can work. But if you're looking at the description of the issue, right, and someone actually modifies the issue somewhere, so you're out of sync, and it is actually not really easy to I mean, there are ways to, of course, keep these two tools. I mean, usually when we talk about syncing two tools, we do it after like discussing and understanding the needs of the sync. For example, if you have to sync Jira with, let us say, let me give you an example of Zendesk, right? Now, a sync is usually where if a ticket is received in Jira, create the same ticket, or not the same ticket, but create a ticket in Zendesk. And when you create a ticket in Zendesk, have a reference of Zendesk in Jira, have a reference of Jira ticket in Zendesk, and you basically sync some parts of it. I mean, you can, of course, map. I mean, based on some tools that you can use. There are a lot of tools, by the way, that you can use, or maybe you can write your own scripts that will basically map a couple of fields, or all other fields if you have that mapping somewhere. And that involves, webhooks. That involves doing this sync regularly. That involves basically triggering these two tools, maybe in one direction, or maybe in both the directions. So it is not really straightforward all the time. And when it comes to org mode, of course you can potentially do like a lot of it, but I never really bothered to make it work. I never really was able to find like a proper mode. I mean, to be honest, there are not really a lot of modes. I think few modes that are available, and I should probably give it a try again. Maybe I'll focus on a specific part, and that will, like, for example, I mentioned adding a comment, right, or updating the logs. That can of course work. I mean, for updating the logs, I normally have a shell script which I use. But to be honest, ideally, if you're working on, let us say, some task in your org file, ideally we should have some association with the, I mean, it should, the way I would imagine, let us say you have a task, any task, somewhere in the properties you can mention the issue key, and whenever you log some time on that particular header or task in org mode, maybe we can run a script that will use the time log and update the Jira issues. But even in that case, there are issues. What if someone actually deletes the log online? So it is again not really straightforward. And whenever it comes to Jira collaboration, you can't really ignore these things unless you have a proper solid solution around it. And yeah, that is it. That is all I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and you learned something new. Thank you very much. Bye bye.